Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for jumping on. If you are having any problems with audio or anything let me know. You're welcome to utilize the chat feature at the bottom. My name is Brad Randall. I think I know everybody on the call here, so happy to have you here. And just by way of information, we are going to be doing these probably 4 or 5 times a year, just based on different topics. And we thought we'd start with landscaping, since it is a very hot topic amongst all of our communities right now. And what the plan is we will bring on different professionals or different people to speak to different subjects. And then we'll have a little bit of time for question and answer. And then we will be recording these and we'll turn them into a YouTube video and we'll post them so that homeowner association boards can go back and review if there's others that would like to be able to review them. So I'm going to share my screen for just a minute and I'll show you where these are going to be posted once they're turned into a YouTube movie. So that way, if there's any board members that are not able to participate, we can make sure to get you in later. So if you go to welchrandall.com and then you go to our main menu, which is just right here at the top. And then you click on frequently asked questions. We will post these videos right underneath here, and we'll have different links and everything for them. So it'll be under frequently asked questions. And if the video length is too long for us to put it in there, we'll figure out another way to get it out. But just know we will be recording these and then we'll do a little summary and some things after. So I also wanted to let you know of our upcoming schedule for these meetings. So let me just get to the right. I've got way too many windows open here. Okay, so today's on Thursday, August 5th, we're talking about landscaping. Our next one will be held on August 26th. It's a Thursday as well, from 4:00 p.m. to 5:00 p.m. And that is going to be regarding reserve studies and HOAs. And we will have Dale Gifford, the owner of Complex Solutions, join, and he'll be talking to us about how reserve studies work. And then we're also going to have Bert Willey, or a member of his legal team from Smith & Knowles, join, and they'll be talking to us about how HOAs can best prepare for reserve studies, what you do with them after, everything that way. And then on Thursday, September 23rd, we will have a training on Insurance Claims 101 for HOA boards. And this will be done by Candace Brewster of American Family Insurance. And she'll be speaking to all of our boards, and we'll talk about how deductibles work, what the HOA legally covers under Utah law, how a master claim works, because all of you as board members at some point will probably have to deal with the headache of a master claim at some point. Now, today's topic, as we noted, is landscaping. With everything that's going on with regards to the drought and what the plans are for that, we thought it would be really good to have a discussion regarding landscaping. So I've asked 2 people that are much smarter than me to come in and talk with us, and I have a few questions for them. And then we'll open it up for a few minutes for any board members. And if you want to put a question in the chat, that's great. Or we may have some time also just for some Q&A at the end. So if it's okay, we've got Braden Buse and John Price. And Braden and John, would you just take a minute or two and just quickly introduce who you are, what company you're with, kind of where you service, and how long you've been involved in this industry. So Braden, why don't we start with you, and then we'll move over to John.
Okay. Thanks, Brad. So I'm Braden Buse, Buse Landscaping. Been in business since 1999. We service Weaver, just basically from North Salt Lake to Brigham City. And then we also service like Huntsville areas and Morgan County. So that's a little bit about us. We're full landscape installation, maintenance, fertilizing, sprinkler service, all that good stuff.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, John, let's move over to you.
John Price, Wasatch Lawn Pros. We service basically from mostly Weavers and Davis counties. And then we do a little bit in Salt Lake here and there as well. But yeah, most of our businesses in Weaver and Davis County. And same thing, we do maintenance and landscaping installs and just too much. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So a lot of the questions that we have actually been generated from our managers from questions they've received from board members. So if you are a board member who have asked this question of your manager, thank you so much for doing so. So here's the first question we have. We are now in the first week of August, and generally speaking, the landscaping season runs through September, and there's even things that are happening in October, as well as maybe cleanups and whatnot in November. With all of the drought conditions in place, and with word that, secondary water may be shut off around the first week of September, we've heard potentially even sooner, what ideas and recommendations would each of you have for board members as they're looking to plan for the remainder of the year? Maybe what things would be helpful and what things maybe should board members take note to say, I would avoid doing this or doing that through the remainder of the season. And either of you can start.
Okay, I mean, biggest thing that we've been trying to do since all of the water restrictions have came out and all of that is we're trying to get everyone to get on board with raising their mowing height up to 3.5, 4 inches and keeping the grass longer. That's going to hold more moisture, and it'll be the same thing going in September and even October. Typically we would start lowering the grass back down in those months, but this year we're going to have to keep them up. If we lose water September 1st, it's going to be pretty rough. September is going to be tough. We're going to be relying on Mother Nature at that point. And realistically, the only thing we can do is, just keep the grass longer and hopefully we get some rain. Everyone start praying for rain.
I know.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, though. I think everybody's got to be prepared mentally. Once water's off, we live in, kind of a desert here, and you just have to understand it's out of our control at that point, and you first have to hope for the best. But I think exactly what you said, in a good fertilizing program, keep your roots alive as long as possible. But it's going to go yellow, earlier than normal, and I know that's already kind of a big complaint in some other areas like Davis County that's shutting water way down and cut back, and I think it's just something that we have to I guess prepare ourselves mentally for that physical look.
Yeah, and like John said, on the fertilizer side, making sure you're not putting down high nitrogen. We went to more of like a Revive product, similar to a Revive. We're not putting any nitrogen down on the lawns at all. I think that's key.
That's great. Thank you. So a question came in, and maybe we could help clarify this. So the question came in from a board member down in Salt Lake, Murray, Holiday area. And there was a question about basically irrigation shutoff versus restriction. And one thing to note is there are some HOAs that utilize culinary water to run their sprinklers. And if you are using culinary water, then there are no plans that you're going to have those shut off, because that's what you need to drink that's everything that way. However, if you look at what the governor has brought out, he has been requesting, And it's not a law or anything that way, but he has been requesting, minimizing sprinkler times, everything like that. So if you are using culinary water, the goal is to try to choose to restrict watering to be able to comply. Now, if you are utilizing a third-party irrigation or secondary water source, which is very common in Davis County, Weber County, and there's a number of areas in Salt Lake that use it as well. That is the entity, those entities have been talking about shutting off their water early. So essentially, and John and Braden, please correct me if I'm wrong, I thought it was generally around the 15th of October that is shut off in a normal year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's correct.
So the discussion now is for people utilizing that secondary water to shut it off about 45 days early, which means for those 45 days, we will be solely reliant on Mother Nature and keeping the grass longer, getting some Revive and other products in there to try to keep it, healthy and green. But really there will not be an option unless an owner goes out with a hose and hooks it to a spigot, with a sprinkler. So that's kind of what we're referring to. So, okay, so Braden and John, here's a question I have. Labor is very hard to come by in the landscaping industry right now, and not just in landscaping, but in a lot of different industries. It's hard to find crews and keep crews. But from homeowners' perspective, if they start to see lawn mowing cut back, and if they start to see services with the lawn start to decrease, not because you guys aren't showing up, but because of these restrictions that are in place, the question that's immediately going to come is, well, let's just trim back on our services and everything that way. Now, from a contractual standpoint, it's a challenge because if you don't have the guys ready, able, and willing to go, then you're not going to be able to perform. However, if there's not work to do for all of them, then it's going to be hard for the HOA community members and the board members to feel comfortable paying. So one of the ideas that has been talked about in a lot of communities is saying, okay, if we're contractually obligated to $1,500 for services for a month for a community, could we work with our landscaper to maybe look at creative ways to fill that time and the resources to fill that contractual obligation? And I just wanted to talk, let you two talk about that to see if that's something that has been requested, if that's something that as landscape providers you're open to, and maybe what ideas you might have to creatively utilize that contractual agreement. Yeah,
I don't want to speak for Braden, but on our end, we still plan on dedicating the same amount of time to those places. I mean, you got to understand just because their water's off, weeds are still going to be prevalent, and bushes will still grow a little bit, overgrowing, and there'll still be plenty of work to do. The other thing is, even inside your lawns, even though they're going to be there, you'll notice weeds and stuff coming up. So you'll still need us there weekly to maintain the yard. Just because it's not being mowed, there's still a lot of things that go beyond just mowing that will need to be maintained. So as far as we're concerned, we plan on still visiting each place weekly and maintaining it in other areas as well. So because just because the water shut off doesn't mean that the place will not need to be maintained at all.
Thank you.
I agree. We've already started on certain properties with what you're talking about, Brad. We've already started to where we're only mowing the portions that need to be mowed, and the portions that don't need to be mowed, we're skipping over, and we're taking that time and we're trimming up trees that haven't been trimmed in years. We're trimming, the dead flowers off the perennials, and we're trying to enhance the property and use the time and the money that's spent in a better way than just showing up and mowing dead grass, right? So we're taking those same amount of hours that we've been using on those properties, and if we have 6 hours of mowing time and we're only spending 3 of those hours mowing, we're taking those other 3 hours, we're focusing more on weeds, we're touching up, trimming, we're trimming trees, because a lot of these properties, especially the ones that I have, they don't they don't have a lot of budget for tree trimming. That none of that stuff's being done on a regular basis. And so that's things where I feel like we can enhance the property and still, you know, fit it in that dollar amount that's allotted for mowing.
Great. Okay, so if you are a board member on this call, or if you're watching this video after the fact, for Braden and Josh, you know, or for John, excuse me, as providers, would you say the best way to go about doing this is to have the board work with the manager to talk about maybe, I mean, you guys are already looking for some things to do, and I imagine you're not alone in that, but have the board work with the manager to look at the contract and also say, could we allocate some additional labor here and here and here? And then provide that over to you to review to make sure that it fits in within those parameters. So have the boards work with the manager and then the managers reach out to you. Do you feel like that's the best way to go about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like between the three of us, you know, the manager, the board member or president, and then the contractor, and even meeting on site to even walk through the property and discuss some of the things that have been lacking, that have been put off for years, and providing a plan of, you know, let's do this, this, and this when we have, you know, X amount of hours to spend. And I think, you know, that's great to put the board member with the management company, but I feel like when you're all in the same room or on site, things just happen quicker and can get decided right there on the spot versus emails back and forth. And then, you know, pretty soon we're already going to be into September by the time that happens, you know.
Right.
I feel like maybe some on-site meetings to discuss like immediate things that can be done would be a faster way to get, you know, the HOAs, what they want done and what they need done, and then also into our hands and saying, all right, this is what we agreed to do and let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're never against communication. You know, the more communication, you know, the better. So obviously we want, you know, our job is to try to make your places look as good as possible. You know, it's what you hire us for. And so I think we're always on board to hearing how we can do that. So yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you so much. Okay, here's a question that a board member posed that I thought was great. As far as new planting for this year, the boards recognize that during the peak heat, which we have now, and with minimal watering going on, it's not best to plant. If you're looking to plant grass or maybe some shrubs or even some trees this year, what do you think would need to happen in the fall in order to be able for boards to even look at, you know, planting this year? Or should they just bag planting altogether and say, let's wait and see how the winter goes? Any thoughts on that? And John, we'll start with you on this one and then move to Braden.
Yeah, I recommend everything right now, planting as late in the year as possible right now when everything's in dormancy. Right now is just with uncertainty in water, you're taking a risk of planting anything. So once you get to a certain point, even in September, we don't do a lot of planting. It's but anyways, yeah, late in the year, where everything's already kind of dormant, you can plant just fine. I wouldn't do sod or anything yet. If you're talking about sod, I'd almost wait till next year and see what kind of winter we got, what kind of water situation we're in. But yeah, right now, my personal opinion to everybody is, of course, we'll do whatever you want, but my personal opinion is hold off on planting anything. It's just a risk for your money. But once it goes into dormancy, you know, like all these plants go into dormancy for the winter, and then you can plant them and you don't have to take that risk of them dying out.
Thank you, John. Braden, any other additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, so kind of like you were saying, certain communities are ran off of culinary water versus secondary water. And obviously the ones that are going to lose water in September, the secondary water, you know, you're not going to want to plant any plants, trees, sod, anything through all of September. The people that are going to lose water, you know, in September probably should look at late October and first part of November if they want to do any planting and sod repairs. I'm not against doing it in the fall, but for me, selection gets pretty slim on plants. Selection's pretty slim on trees going into winter. So honestly, if it's plants and trees, I would wait till spring. If it's sod, I would do it late October to first part of November. Kind of Mother Nature's going to dictate that also. I mean, if we get early snow, then you know it's going to be over with. But if it's wet October, then I say let's plan for sod repairs in October.
Great, thank you. So a lot of communities we manage and that these community boards are a part of, developers initially came in and put in a bunch of trees, and some of those trees work really well in Utah and some of them are not so great. So with a desert climate like we have here, a high elevation desert, what are there any tree types or trees that you would recommend for HOA? Are there any types that you'd say, this is one that we've seen do really well in communities? Maybe the roots are good and they're not, they're a little more drought resistant or anything that way. Any recommendations on trees that you could give to board members?
Canada red chokecherry is one of the hardiest trees around that's in that mid-size range. It can handle low water, it can handle heavy water. That's a great tree for what you're talking about.
And Braden, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, the Canada red chokecherries.
Canada red chokecherry. Okay. I'm just going to write that in the chat so that it's there.
Okay. Most of your, crab apples, pear trees, they all like water. So a lot of our nursery stock that's stocked here in Utah is not meant for, the desert that we actually live in. They require a lot of water. But I'd be happy to, put a list together and send that out of recommended trees, because it's hard to recommend certain trees because there's so many different sizes and what space it's going to go in. So certain maples are great for water and certain ones don't like water, and it's certain species, and depending on the place and sun exposure and all that good stuff, it'd probably be best if we had a list put together for you for size, sun exposure, all that stuff.
That's great. Yeah. And if you want to put together just a basic list, we can add that to our website, just anything that way, because whether you're planting out in front of a home or even on a rooftop garden or things like that, obviously everyone wants their community to look nice and you want it to look good. But in my experience, I've seen that many times developers are not actually considering maybe even the roots of the tree or where what type of tree it is. They just, if it looks nice and they can get it at a certain cost, they put it in.
What's at the right cost and what's available at the nursery at that time, and that's what they put in. That's what we see a lot of.
John, any other thoughts on trees or recommended things for plants or trees in this environment?
No, I was going to say the same thing. It's hard to say a certain one because every tree will act differently in different areas too. Like if you're up more on the bench, we're going to recommend a different tree than if you're out towards the lake. And so it's like I would agree with what Braden said. There's a list of certain areas, trees that I've seen have worked well, and trees that I don't recommend. And a lot of times the developers are putting in the trees that I don't recommend. But yeah, so again, that's kind of, I don't think there's just like a single answer, this tree works no matter where you are, kind of a thing. It's kind of, well, for these places, these trees would work. These places, different trees would work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So it is anticipated that this will probably not be our only year of drought, that even though we are hopeful, I hope we get 50 feet of snow in the mountains this winter. I think we all hope that. However, let's say that the drought persists into next year. Any recommendations as boards are looking to plan for 2022, as they're putting together their budgets, as they're putting together kind of helping to build expectations for homeowners, which, as everyone knows, meeting owners' expectations can be challenging at times because everyone has their own idea of what a perfect community should look like. But any recommendations that you would give from the landscaping side as boards and management companies prepare for 2022?
You want me to start?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, so I know Salt Lake County's been talking, and there's rumors moving around that some of the other counties are talking about giving out some rebates on grass removal. So I think everyone should be looking at that pretty heavily, especially like park strip areas, unusable grass areas like that. I think that's a discussion to be had. There's so much unusable and wasted, water in those areas. I feel like we can make a huge impact just on park strips alone. I feel like that's a good place to start. Also, recommending for next year, changing up your fertilizer program and not going with so much high nitrogen that requires all that water to keep up with the top growth of the lawn. I would definitely recommend changing that. That's going to save a ton of water.
And what's the fertilizer you'd recommend?
So what we're doing right now is like a Revive, but it's not Revive.
Okay.
So similar type application. It's more of an organic material that you're putting on top of the grass, and it's feeding it organically instead of chemically. Typically, we would be putting like high nitrogen down and basically boosting up the lawn at this time. When we do that, it requires a ton of water to keep up with that fertilizer. If not, you get the fertilizer that actually burns the lawn. If you don't have enough water right after you fertilize, it burns. So going away from those high nitrogens is going to be a key for next year. We need to go with more organics and even look at top dressing the lawns and spreading organic material over the top of the lawns. Aeration is going to be huge. I would recommend doing an aeration this fall and another one in the spring. And that is going to help a lot.
For me, who is not envisioning, I'm sure when you use the phrase top dressing, I am envisioning not anything related to lawn. Could you explain that to someone that's not really educated in that?
So top dressing is used on golf courses, throughout the whole year. And it's starting to become more popular on the residential side. And honestly, I think it'll start to take over even on the bigger lawn areas, commercial side and HOAs. It's basically spreading organic material over the top of the lawn in a very thin layer, and that's going to feed the soil with organics instead of applying a harsh nitrogen fertilizer that's a man-made chemical, right? It's basically going back to feeding the soil instead of just boosting up the lawn.
Love it. Thank you. For me, that's not a smart dude, I appreciate the explanation. So
yeah.
John, how about recommendations from you? Those were excellent from Braden. As boards are looking into 2022, what does your crystal ball say we should be thinking about as we're moving into the next year planning?
Well, I'm a farmer, so we do everything wrong to begin with, so whether nature works against us to begin with. So I don't have a crystal ball or else I'd get out of farming. But if I was be smart, but what I would say, same thing, like soil and roots are you got to focus on, you got to keep your soil and your roots system healthy. And nitrogen is like a shot, it's like a steroid, it's something that's going to make it look really good. but it's kind of there and it's gone. And like you said, it has to be treated with water where the focus, well, next year will be, which means maybe your lawn might not be as green, but the focus will be on keeping it healthy to survive another drought year until you can get back to, some of the normal things it used to. But yeah, I would say that's key. And then like all those island areas that where you don't need grass, there's some of those areas that they're just kind of like islands. Then I would definitely xeriscape those. That'll help a ton because you don't really have any use of grass there except for purely looks. And anywhere that people are walking and playing and whatnot, like yeah, keep your grass. But anywhere that's not necessarily that area, like so I can think of, like he said, park strips and islands and things like that. Yeah, I'd get rid of those, and you can cut back a ton on water on those places. And anywhere you can look that you can say, well, this is not a used place. It's not where people come to, come and enjoy. I guess there's no sense for grass being there. We could look at tearing that out and doing something new there.
Yeah. So you mentioned, thank you so much. You mentioned xeriscaping, and I know that there's questions sometimes that come to us that say, I believe in xeriscaping, and I think it's good, but it's so expensive. And the only way to do it is to spend, there's no way you'll be able to do anything with less than $50,000 or anything like that. If a board is looking at maybe some xeriscaping options, what recommendations would you have to maybe start that conversation that are maybe more affordable xeriscaping options, or even just, as they're looking at xeriscaping, where would you have them begin? I love the idea of starting on the park strips or maybe areas of grass that they don't need to be grass, but what would be better to do with it that could be potentially doable for a community to get started?
So like talking about a park strip or something, and being a xeriscape doesn't mean it doesn't have to have zero plants whatsoever. I mean, you can obviously do that, but like you can still do a drip system, which takes very little water, to do, and still have, a few nice looking plants and whatnot. Or you can just go like a rock design. There's tons of things you can do. And the options are kind of endless I shouldn't say endless. There's quite a few options that you can go with on that. And not all of them have to be all that expensive. We're talking about a lot of these areas aren't huge, massive areas. And you can start little by little. I don't think you have to go on and tackle your entire property, and say every single spot that's not needed, let's get rid of, But I think we can identify a few spots to start off with and start making that conversion.
Make that adjustment, the transition. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Braden, any additional thoughts on that?
I say we throw a HOA work party day. Let's get everyone in the HOA out there and start digging out some grass, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I really do think that just taking small sections make a big difference. I mean, for example, in those park strips, each one of those heads are putting out over 1 gallon a minute, each minute that they're watering. So when you add up, the hundreds and hundreds of park strip heads that most of these properties have, I mean, it's hundreds of gallons, if not tens of thousands of gallons each watering cycle that we're saving on that. So I mean, there's a lot of information that we can provide on that, on how much water savings you would save by getting rid of those heads in the park strips and go into a xeriscape or dryscape,
So perhaps we look at kind of a twofold thing and say, let's look at areas that can be changed and start to do that, just like John was saying, maybe not all at once, but little by little. But then also on the flip side, we could begin to work with boards to communicate to them, here are the pluses that, savings wise that we're going to be able to have. And also it's still going to look nice. It's just going to save a lot of water. And yeah, there may be an expense up front, but we could do it in manageable chunks. So it's kind of education as well as proactive planning.
And with, removing grass and installing rock we can pretty much break it down to a square footage price. So, I mean, if the HOA wants to budget $1,000 for, xeriscaping for the next season, we can basically say, this is how much square footage we can do, and go about it like that. So they can try and plan for future projects. Maybe we take this park strip or this island this year, and then next year we do this section. And it's easy to manage, because it's this much square footage and it's this much per square foot. And it's something that is easily, thrown into a budget. Because you can basically decide how big a space you want to do. You don't have to do the entire property all at once. You can do 1,000 square feet at a time if you want.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have a couple minutes left, and I'd like to open it up if there are board members that maybe have a question that you'd like to pose to Braden or to John. Is there anybody that has a question that you'd like to be able to ask? I know we've gotten to some in the chat. Any over the video that you'd like to be able to do?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, Brad, can you hear me? This is Kat McVeigh.
Yes, we can hear you, Kat.
Okay, so I'm back in New England and we're having tons of rain. I know that we're thinking about redoing the back of our parking strip at some point, and I'm just wondering if we should do a dryscape or a xeriscape, so we don't have to deal with that big tree trunk that looks horrendous, and the roses and the prickly bushes, but we have a lot of quail back there and we don't want to displace them.
So John and Braden, for areas around parking lots. So in this example, the building has a parking lot on the east side. There's just a whole bunch of bushes and stuff that have been planted there over time. They really are not ideal for the area, and they've caused some issues with the building itself. As you look at that, do you feel like just removing those things would be best? What have you seen around parking lots that you might recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's a problem and it's causing you a problem, cleaning it out and starting fresh to make it, you can make it cosmetically look nice, and B, put it in so it's not causing you problems. I'd say if it's an issue, then yeah, it's always best to just tear it out instead of trying to always work around it. But that's just me.
Okay. I know also, if you've got a bird population or something around there, if there are other areas around the property that still have plants, which, in this case, Governor's Square does have some other areas, we've seen where if some bushes are removed, there have been some, basically the birds will move over to another area and it's been okay. Now, if you destroy everything, then they would have to move off site. But I think there are ways that you can do it without it, being a complete loss for a bird or something that way, but also still accomplish what you need to. What other questions do you board members have?
Brad, this is Andrew over at Canyon Place. I actually have to head out here in a minute, but I really liked what Braden and John said. A lot of great points, but maybe we could set up a time with Brenda and meet up and kind of further those discussions a little bit. But there was a lot of them that I really liked that I thought were great points that we could, maybe look at deeper, maybe looking at it, face to face and talking about it. There's a lot of things. I don't want to take up the rest of the time here, but there was a lot of things I want to talk about.
Yeah, and we would recommend, as a board discussing, and if that's through a walkthrough with the manager, talking through ideas, things that way. So that's great. And I also know that there are communities that are looking to potentially get bids, coming for the fall and everything that way. And I'm sure Braden, if they're in a service area that they work with, Braden and John would be more than happy to connect as well. So yeah, just reach out to your manager and they can help get that arranged as well.
That sounds good. I like the zero scape, just under a budget, little pieces by pieces. I like having a better game plan with the lawn, that doesn't require as much water. So I like it. We'll be in touch.
That's great. And I think a principle here that comes out is, you know, as I work to train for a marathon, the thought of running 26 miles, every time I do one, it just sounds insurmountable. And I get grumpy. I'm not excited about it, but I can run one. And as you look at building a budget for your landscaping, changing out your entire property, it feels overwhelming. But if you can budget $1,000 or $2,000 next year to an improvement project like this, then you do that over 3 or 4 years and people are going to start to notice. You know, you don't necessarily have to do this in one painful sweep. You can do it over time. So any other questions from board members before we sign off
Yeah,
here?
this is Vera from the same community that Andrew's in. I live here and I'm a property owner, and I'm into like working on the property myself and investing some muscle into it. And because I kind of miss working on my own stuff when I was literally a homeowner, right? So yeah, having that HOA dang party, you know, ripping up the grass, I'm all for that, and saving some money, you know, and I'm getting the approval from whoever we need to. If it's the city of Ogden, let's do it, you know, and letting the grass die in the parking strips, let's do it. I don't care, whatever it takes. And if we have to have, you know, one of those fellows come over here and advise us, and, you know, cost a little bit here and there, then we can obviously do that. But if we can get some of the homeowners here in on that, I'm all for that as well.
And we have seen some success, Vera, where between the management company and the board, they have organized, you know, landscaping days or a certain project, and they will get either coffee and donuts or pizza. And I mean, they've done it where we had a community that did a mixer, you know, and they had, now you don't want to go heavy on the alcohol necessarily, but they had non-alcoholic and some beers and things that way for people.
Sure.
And they just worked for a couple hours, and
Right.
it was a positive way. And at the end of the day, they spent, you know, a little bit of money on food, but they got some projects done. And labor is not cheap. You know, if you look at your bills, it's one of the most expensive things for a landscape company and for any contractor. So if you can do some of this through and make it a positive thing, you know, there's some really creative ways to go about it, and you don't have to do it. You know, you can use a professional, but if you can look at it from some creative lens points, then there's also those options. So
yeah, and with us being a small community, it makes it hard with money value here. You know what I mean? So that's why we try, but it's like we don't have, like, I don't know, the mindset, or I don't know, the reach out or whatever. I don't know the words I'm trying to use, but you know what I mean.
It makes sense when you're a smaller community. If you have 200 units, if you charge everybody $10 or $20 extra, it goes further than if you have 30 units. You can charge everybody $20 and it's not going to get you very far on landscaping.
Right.
So you have to pitch in more. So creative options are good.
Yeah. So maybe Brenda will help us out some more with that aspect of it, right?
That's great.
Well, Kara, I wanted to tell you that we had a little organizing. We didn't have anything like donuts or coffee or beers, but at Governor Square in Marmalade, we had 4 or 5 of our board members work on the front entrance that was pretty much a mess. Yeah. And we worked the weekend and it came out great. And I'm actually in a Master Gardener program completing my volunteer time. And it was just a good, and a lot of people walked out of the condo and said, what's going on here? I would really like to be involved next time.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'd like to do. We have a majority of renters here. And,
Okay.
we're trying to change that up as well. But, would help if the owners themselves would get a little bit more involved. And I think that's where the difficulty is, so I try to push for that. I think eventually we'll get there. But just got to get more proactive, some of these people, that's all, I went and
Exactly.
bought a projector and I want to have a movie night and just get people involved, and just, I don't know, get out there more, and get people involved, so we'll see, we'll work on it,
And you know what? It really is just little by little. So you can do little
Yeah.
projects like
Mhm.
Pat did, and they can have a big impact, or sometimes you'll do it. And
Mhm.
I mean, I went to a landscaping thing that we did for a community, and it was me and 2 board members, and we had a lot of donuts to eat, but the next time they did it, they had,
Yeah.
I think 5 or 6. And so it just takes a little bit of time. So I think that's great. Now, any final questions for our experts today before we sign off?
Thanks for all the tips, guys. That was really good. Maybe we might have one of you guys come out here for us.
It was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. Now, this kind of goes back earlier this year, we sent out a survey to our boards just to say, what are some things that you feel would be helpful for you as you are serving in a board? And the number one thing that came back was additional resources to help as you're doing this. And so part of why we are doing this series is to help provide some more resources for you as board members. Now, we know that none of you are making big bucks doing this. And I look at all the names on here, and you dedicate time, you dedicate sweat, and sometimes tears towards your communities. So from us as a management company, we want to thank you for all that you do. We know that you don't get thanked very much. So thank you for all that you do. And we will continue to provide these resources moving forward. We're going to do some in the Zoom format. We're also going to just have some reading material that can be provided. And don't worry, these will not be like 200 pages. We're talking some checklists with some lists and things, best practices, just things that can help you moving forward. So we're appreciative of the relationships that we've been able to build with all of you, and look forward to continuing to do it. So have a great afternoon, everyone. And we're not to the weekend yet, but we're getting there. So thank you so much. And until next time, we'll sign off for now. So thank you, Braden and John.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your input.
Yeah, thanks.